All right, welcome every one of you to Moneyline with me, Nancy, Nnaji on African Independent Television. Just before you joined us here, we had started the program where I took you, or where I talked about the developing stories in the economic space, looking at the unemployment data that the National Bureau of Statistics released yesterday. Very sad and sour figures. 33.3% unemployment rate in Nigeria. It rose from 27.1%. Just a few hours ago also, inflation numbers in the country was released by the statistical agency, and it indicated that inflation in the country also skyrocketed to about 17%, the worst in 4 years. Those are the details of the CPI headline inflation numbers. Joining me is Johnson Chukwu, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Asset Management. Mr. Chukwu, let's come back and reiterate again. I know you had started earlier, but let me take it again. 2 recessions, 1 pandemic, a stagflation, and a stagflation to our audience or our viewers means persistent high, that the rate of inflation continues to rise amid high unemployment rate. That is what I mean by stagflation. So we have 2 recessions, 1 pandemic, stagflation in the country, a worsening debt, trade deficit, poverty capital of the world. While this again is there, the highest food prices in 12 years. I asked earlier, what can be worse than this? Is hell worse than this? Aren't we living in hell already?
Well, Nancy, like I said earlier, the situation that can be worse than this if we have an outright and full-blown civil war. That's what you could say would be worse than this. But aside from that, clearly Nigeria is going through severe economic crisis. Nigeria is facing a lot of social crisis. In terms of our social and economic environment, Nigerians are having it rough. You have mentioned the issue of inflation rate, which came at a print of 17.3% in the month of February. You mentioned the issue of unemployment at 3.3%. Even if you look at the fact that the most active age, that is the age of between 25 and 34, their unemployment rate is 42.5%, as at the end of last quarter of 2020. You have mentioned the issues about increasing level of poverty. Of course, if you have a slower economic growth rate than your population growth rate, you are certainly going to have an increasing incidence of poverty, which is what we're witnessing today. So we have seen, like you pointed out, we have seen 2 recessions. In 2016, the economy contracted by 1.58%, and in 2020, it contracted by 1.92%. And even in between those 2 years, when we saw growth, they were marginal. In 2017, the economy grew by only 0.82%. 2018, it grew by only 1.91%. And in 2019, it grew by only 2.27%, only to collapse back into a recession and contract by 1.92% in 2020. So even if you look at the growth in those 5 years or thereabout, you will find that the average growth has been far below 2%, while as population is growing at about 3%. So these are all indicators of weak economic performance. They are indicators that could lead to social crisis the type we're having today. Nancy, if you further disaggregate the unemployment figure that were published by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics yesterday, you will observe that in terms of the population of Nigerians in economic age, or economically active age, that is those between the age of 15 and 64 years, you will observe that the population of Nigerians in economically active age grew by 4.3%, from 116 million to 122 million. So the number of people who actually should be gainfully employed, should be productive in the economy, actually increased. But interestingly, and most shockingly, the labor force actually contracted by 13.2%. The labor force contracted from 80 million to just 69.7 million. And that should be of great concern to the government, because it simply means so many Nigerians have become so despondent. They are not even looking for a job because they don't think they will ever get a job. And those who have gotten to that level of despondency are likely the ones who are involved in kidnapping and all sorts of crime. Who are those who are joining the Boko Harams, who are joining all sorts of free organizations to actually terrorize the society. because they really they have to take their pound of flesh from the society which have ignored them. So these are the concerns every Nigerian should have. If we don't address the economy, we cannot address the social crisis. And this, we can only address that if we begin to grow economic activity, if we have an appropriate economic policies that will ensure that we're creating jobs.
Okay, I don't know which to take now. Is it the chicken or the egg? The chicken or the egg in the sense that should we look at the cocktail of Buharinomics that Buharinomics, or should we interrogate the numbers further? Let's go to interrogate the numbers further. With the numbers that the NBS released yesterday, you know, showed us quite a whole lot of things. And if we have that card, we can put it on the screen quickly. Looking at those numbers, women are more unemployed in Nigeria, 35% compared to about 31% of men that are unemployed in Nigeria. What does that tell us? Secondly, Imo State happens to be the state that has the highest unemployment rate. And just before we came in, Imo State was having a live broadcast that adds into our time, the commissioning of, I think, a World Bank Federal Road Secretariat or so, if I saw that right. So how do, okay, just break down those numbers for me, because I'm actually lost for words, really.
Okay, let's start from Imo State, which came with an unemployment of 56.6%. Interestingly, Imo State has maintained this unenviable status as the unemployment capital of the country, because this is not the first time Imo State coming top as the state with the highest level of unemployment. Principally, what is happening in Imo State, if you go to Imo State, you see a lot of young people who want to be employed and who cannot be employed. I visit Imo State regularly, and you observe that you see a lot of people who are taxi drivers who have master's degree. They are driving Uber. They are underemployed. You see a number of people who are hoping that they'll get employment. Unfortunately, there's no industry in the state. The only industry in the state seems to be the hospitality industry, which unfortunately it doesn't seem as if the government has a clear strategy on how to develop that industry so that it could be a tourist state. So you have a lot of people that are able, willing to work, but are not able to find jobs in Imo State. And this cuts across not just the state capital, like when you go to other states, you find out that even in places like Mbisemba, all the nooks and crannies of the state, they are heavily populated, and a lot of people there are graduates that are hoping that one day they will get something doing. So that's why Imo State is coming up repeatedly as the unemployment capital of the country. Then as it relates to female and male unemployment, you will observe that when you talk of unemployment, you're talking of those who are willing and ready to work, who are unable to get jobs. Of course, we still have to deal with some discrimination in terms of the labor market in the country, though it's not as severe as it used to be. A lot of organizations will still prefer to give jobs to men in place of women, or will give the first option to men in place of women. So you have to deal with that. And if you look at our demography, you observe that in terms of sex distribution of our demography, we're almost even. The male and female population is almost even. So if men have better chance of being employed, it certainly means that female will have higher level of employment. And they will now have a reasonable number of female who are willing to work, who unfortunately are not able to work. Again, there are some jobs that men are willing to take, women may not be able to take. Of course, we know this kind of some discrimination, like some physically oriented jobs, women may not be able or willing to take such jobs. So that excludes them from getting those jobs. So these are some of the reasons that can explain that, that you have a disproportionate representation of women in the unemployment market than the men.
Right now, in terms of social unrest, in terms of if a lot of women are out of jobs, what will those women do? Perhaps that's why we're also seeing an increase in different kind of vices. I don't want to call names, but you understand what I mean, because for those unemployed women, or even the men alike, would also find what they would do, either social vices, either kidnapping, all of this, or prostitution, sex trafficking, all of that coming into being. That takes me to the point that we must also say that this unemployment rate, which is the highest at 33.3%, is the second highest in the world behind Namibia when I was taking a look at that data. Why can't we just find ourselves in the good books, economic good books? Apart from Burna Boy and Whiskey news that we had over the weekend that seemed to lighten up our spirit, just a day, 2 days later, we're getting this, these numbers that are not looking so well. What does it say for Buharinomics? A cocktail of policies that have been on for the last few years. This government goes on welfare, providing conditional cash transfer, N-Power is there, GEP is there, COVID loans there, loans to manufacturing and all of that. Yet, we are having the size of unemployed people. Is it that Buharinomics is not working? Or the models that may also work in other places are not working, really? Can you just put some perspectives for me there?
Okay, what I would say is that the president's economic policies initially were socially oriented. And we all know that handouts will never create employment, are not sustainable in all ramifications. So what you need is to create an environment where people can be gainfully employed and where they can feed their children and feed their families instead of just giving them 1 meal in a day. But let's bring it down to the basics. You see, some of those policies are well-intended, or many of them are well-intended. Some of them could have long-term benefits, but many of them are not sustainable. And I always believe that if you have to talk of conditional cash transfer, the conditions must be specified. And those conditions must be that either you are encouraged to send your children to school, and if you send them to school, you get the cash transfer. It's not just a handout for no benefit's sake. But let me go to what we need to do as a country to address this level of employment and reverse this declining trend and this depressing situation. We need to address the issue of infrastructure, and we cannot stop emphasizing the issue of infrastructure. And we can learn from some of the things that a few countries have done. China recently became the first country among the third world countries to declare a zero level of abject poverty, to exit extreme poverty. So today, of the 1.3 billion people in China, none of them is extremely poor. And what did they do? China first started by building infrastructure, world-class infrastructure that attracted the world and made China a cheap producer of goods and services. So virtually, China became the manufacturing hub of the world. And that created employment immediately. Even in the last 2 months, if you look at the figures from China, China created 1.2 million additional new jobs between the months of January and February this year. China's investment in physical infrastructure, capital goods, was 34% in 2 months of this year. So you need to focus on the heavy lifting, which is build infrastructure. When you build infrastructure, one, you create an environment where manufacturing can take place. There's no economy that has a huge population that is service-oriented, that is not thriving to be a manufacturing base. That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump, while he was the president of America, was pushing that jobs could come back to America, because the huge population of Americans needed to be working. A country like United Arab Emirates that has a small population, of Singapore, could be service-oriented. But a country with 200 million people, 122 million economically active population cannot but have supported infrastructure to attract manufacturing activities. We already have a huge market that will ordinarily be a pull to manufacturers, but you don't have the supporting infrastructure. So we need to address that pointedly. If you continue to give handouts to people, if you feed somebody today, there's a saying that, teach me how to fish, don't give me fish to eat. If you give me fish to eat in the morning, what of afternoon and evening? But if you teach me how to fish, I'm going to harvest the fish, I'm going to catch the fish and sell and make money. So that's what is lacking. Most of the approaches we adopted, we are focused on what you may call welfarist approach, giving out handouts to people.
Mr. Chukwu, let me butt in. Since you talked about infrastructure, would you give this government some credit in terms of infrastructural development around rail, perhaps the completion of some of the projects that was handed over to them from the Jonathan administration, and some other projects within the country. The infra core is being moved now. Expression of interest is on. An additional 2 weeks have been on. That is also being touted to unlock the infrastructural development in the country. I understand what you mean, that for a population of 206 million people and counting, because our birth rate is higher than our death rate and our population growth is growing higher than our economic growth rate. So we need for the young people that are so many in the country to find jobs. Would you give this administration some kind of credit, or what should they do more so that we can escape this economic conundrum which we find ourselves?
Okay, let me start by outrightly, I will give them credit for a number of things they've done in infrastructure. But I think we have to move faster. And some of those things they've done, the infrastructure tax credit, where they give tax credit to those who build infrastructure, which they can deduct from their tax liabilities over a period of time. And those tax credits can actually be sold or transferred to third parties who will now apply them to reduce their tax liabilities. That, for me, is a very creative approach to infrastructure build. The second aspect you just mentioned, the infrastructure that is supposed to have a capacity about 15 trillion naira. That's also innovative. Then you have the infrastructure credit company, infra credit, that's also focused on supporting or enhancing the quality of credit that is going to infrastructure development. Those are commendable. The rail systems that the government is doing, but I think we need to move faster. Nancy, the problem we're having is that we are running at a rate where those things pursuing us are faster than us. And if we, in as much as we are running, if we don't run faster, they will be swallowed up by the storm, because the storm is approaching us at a speed that is faster than our rate at which we are running. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we get Rolls-Royce engines to move faster, to run faster? If we don't do that, the efforts will be wasted, because we are likely going to be consumed by the social crisis that we manage from the economic crisis. And that's why today you're having kidnapping on a daily basis. Because, like I said earlier, you have 122 million economically active population, but your labor force has dropped from 80 million to just barely 70 million to 69.7 million. So what has happened to the 10 million people? Where are they? They are not there, though. We must bear that in mind. It's either some of them have migrated. In fact, if they have migrated, they've actually left your labor force. But the issue is that it's either they have gone into crime, or they have become so despondent, they've lost faith in living, or that they will ever get jobs. They are not making any effort to get jobs. So, and that group is a potential criminal group, because over time they will get frustrated and they have nothing to lose, and they will either tend towards joining some negative groups, or they will form some themselves. And I can tell you, if 10 million people are armed, they will drive away 200 million of us. If 10 million people are armed and they are bent on doing evil, they have the capacity to disorganize this country. Because that population is higher than the population of almost other West African countries, about 6 or 7.
You may not be far from, okay, it's the truth actually, because at the end of the day, you see that we're synonymous with Yahoo. And perhaps when the AFCC catches or gets some of these people that are involved, and they say, oh, because there are no jobs. That's the quickest and easiest thing they tell them. So you see the advancement of Yahoo, prostitution, different things, because, like they say, man must eat. But if we still interrogate these numbers further, and perhaps this administration, Buharinomics, so to speak, do you think the president is so big on economy? You know, because while I'm asking that question, I had to go back history, 1983, 1984, when he was, is he a general, major general then, you know? Yes, the economy was almost, it was like the same thing that we're passing through right now. But it seems that even now is worse than that time. What is the missing link? What exactly is the missing link? What is President Buhari not getting? Or what kind of advice is he not receiving? Or is he receiving it and is turning deaf ears to it? Who are his economic advisors? The Bismarck Rewane, the Doyin Salamis, the Soludos were put together there as advisors. Since then, the economy has been tanking. What exactly is happening? And as Nigerians, are we seeing that urgency? These are numbers that came in yesterday. Nigeria is second on the unemployment data in the world. And everything is going as normal. In a sane country, perhaps the president should come out and say, I've seen these numbers, guys. These are the things we're doing. What can we do to ameliorate it? Or perhaps am I in my own wilderness crying, oh, save Nigeria, and nothing is being done.
Well, what I would say is that when the president campaigned in 2015, the president, Muhammadu Buhari, never came to Nigerians and said that economic management was his greatest forte.
No, it was part of his three pillars: economy, corruption, and what's the other one? Insecurity.
Yes, insecurity, corruption, like you said. But we all know, I mean, nobody has ever ascribed knowledge of or exceptional skills on economy is to him. The key thing is that the machinery of government should have a process to deal with economic issues, to bring the highlights of key economic decisions to the president and convince him on what is most appropriate. And I can tell you this, each person comes with his own economic orientation, whether you're an economist or not. Like I said, the president is a welfarist person. He believes in social safety net. He believes in supporting the poor. He's a pro-poor person.
No, but Mr. Chukwu, just to butt in, we've also seen economies that are welfarist or socialist in nature. The China, which you talked about earlier, China did a lot of things in those numbers of years. It's not a discussion we need to get into right now, that we still saw an improvement. So why is ours different?
Okay, I'm heading somewhere. So what has happened is that excessive focus on let me help the poor did not recognize the fact that to help the poor is not just to give them food to eat. You need to create an opportunity for the poor to be employed, to sweat it out, to make money from his or her own sweat, and take care of his families. So that link has not been established, which is what China did. There was a linkage between handouts and work. I had mentioned the issue of if you have to talk of conditional cash transfer, that it must be conditional. That's why they call it conditional cash transfer. That's why Brazil used it effectively, because it is supposed to incentivize some actions, some positive response. But back to the issues we are discussing. And I give you a live example today. Nancy, you and I earlier this week I think on Friday had to deal with fuel scarcity, roads we are blocked in Lagos, people clearly announced that the expected price of petroleum products should be about 212 naira at the pump, and people panic to go and buy. And the government pulled down that publications and have come profusely to deny there is any intention to increase fuel price in March. We all know that the landing cost of fuel is far above the current pump price. The government has said repeatedly, and I said repeatedly, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of State for Petroleum, the GMD of the Global Managing Director of NNPC have said repeatedly that Nigeria is going to have a cost-reflective petroleum pricing mechanism so that the government does not have to pay subsidy. And the resources that are being used to subsidize petroleum products will be used to build infrastructure, build schools, support the educational system, support the health system, that will lead to better economic value. Unfortunately, somebody is saying that should not happen. Who is saying that? The president should stand up and say, look, we have taken the decision and we have to implement it. It's going to take some pains on our parts to have a market reflective pricing of petroleum products. But in the next 3 to 5 years, we would have refineries here working. The refineries will employ Nigerians, so it will reduce the level of unemployment. The refineries will produce products, it will save us foreign exchange from the importation of refined petroleum products. The refineries will produce byproducts that will go into the pharmaceutical industry, the medicine industry, the painting industry, and we will reduce the cost that we are spending on importation of some of those raw materials that we use for paints for the pharmaceutical, because they come from the pharmaceutical industry. And then we will create a huge value chain that will benefit the economy far more than the cost of buying petrol at higher cost. But we are not doing that. So if you continue with the hand that we don't want the poor to suffer, the poor is suffering and is slipping out of control.
Yes, because in other words, you're not helping the poor. If you give a poor person a 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira trader money or market money, and that person starts a menial job or start trading at a small scale, that man or woman would also go to the market to buy food right now, the food prices are the highest at 12 years. So it's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. In essence, it doesn't really make sense at the end of the day. Mr. Chukwu, thank you for speaking with me this morning. We will continue to interrogate those numbers in days to come, because these are alarming numbers and it should not make anybody sleep, especially those in the economic management corridors. I wonder if they slept yesterday that they saw those numbers, or how they are waking up this morning to attend to the issues of the economy. But many thanks to you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.